how things look like versus the average that is 35%. You can see that Erbil looks better with a lower rate, and even Inawa with a lower rate of spending for food. Here is where I want to go. That's the distribution of the PDS. That's Batak Altamunia. So you only have 5% of the households receiving more than 4 items of the PDS. The rest are receiving. They all say, yes, we do receive, but 1 item, 2 items is primarily wheat, flour, and rice. Those are the items that are being transferred. Going at the graph with the same thing. The dietary, the next one, dietary diversity. No, not this one. Anyway, so I'm looking for slide 27. No, 27. Okay, so that's where you can see how many of the households can actually afford at least one day or a few days per month certain items, and that's a situation that shows what people eat. What people eat is essential to their capacity to perform their productivity. So if they eat constantly one item, their physical and mental capacities are majorly affected. Another one, please. Here you can see how many households are looking at possibilities to cope with the absence of food. If they cannot buy, they are producing inside the household. They are resorting to food or income received from outside. So the comfort of affording for spending is for food is not there. Some interesting items for you to see, and with this I'm going to finish the presentation. You can see the confidence in institutions. That's how growth and access to services translate into confidence in that people have in the government. People will never support governments that cannot deliver services. You need to know which services are the most important for them. Obviously, the capacity to provide food for their families, but it's also the need for jobs for their kids, the need for school for their children, the need for good education. You will see that according to the confidence indicator index, I'm not sure that's the one, so I'm looking for Wahad al-Thalathin. Anyway, so somehow we don't, that's the one I'm looking for. You can see that leaders, religious leaders, tribal leaders, security forces seem to get more confidence. Central government is only with 6%, al-Hukuma, and also much less international organizations. So I'm not even supposed to speak because you can only trust me 3.2% confidence we get, and that's not good, but we continue to be willing to talk to you to improve that perception.
We have 100%.
Social and political activity, you can see how many people are engaged in the life of this country. How many of them have filed a complaint? How many of them have demonstrated? How many of them are resorting to media channels, communication channels to understand politics? How many of them are part of political debates? How many of them? This is not good. A country in which the society enjoys participating into the public life, into the political life, is more likely to reach progress faster. There is a pressure that the population can put on the government using various means on state institutions, government, parliament, the judiciary, for them to perform. So those are very low rates, by the way, and we are a little bit discouraged. And something that you may like looking at, the next slide, please, is the transparency and the way services are made available to people. You will see where bribery is being placed, and interestingly enough, doctors, teachers, Judges are less subjected to receiving bribes than other categories of the state. However, the fact that police is seen as the most, I wouldn't say corrupt institution, but I would say an institution that is less performing against rules and more based on a subjective, random situation generated by the bribe is the police, which is not really good for the society of Iraq, not to have confidence in those institutions that are supposed to secure them, to provide public order. Going back, this is the perception of corruption. That's the perception of corruption, how perception is increasing or decreasing with respect to institutions that are being corrupt. The perception is that actually political parties, civil servants of ministries are the most corrupt. And then the map per governorate, where you can see where the prevalence of bribes is located. Obviously, where the power is, Baghdad will always be on top because that's where the power is, the authority to solve problems. And some other slides that I leave for you with the dissemination of information. So we do have all this information on the IAU portal, and again, this Iraq Knowledge Network is upgrading, updating information every year. We stand at your disposal to come and debate. Today I've presented indicators. I would be happy to sit with you and to explain to you how we believe some of the words of indicators are supposed to be addressed through policies, through programmatic interventions by the government. The last thing for me is that no government on earth can deliver against expectations of people alone. It is very important for the government of Iraq to have the understanding and the openness towards partnering with the private sector, partnering with civil society organizations. Those entities are also supposed to be socially and environmentally friendly, to treat people, to treat the environment respectfully and in a sustainable manner. In this regard, the United Nations has launched the United Nations Global Compact. Is a platform of partnership, the government and the private sector. The Network of Iraq was launched in December. The network is increasing. What is this network doing? The private sector signing up for the Global Compact takes the responsibility to guarantee in their business practices human righs, labor standards, environmental sustainability and transparency. Regardless of what the government is doing, the private sector took that responsibility to introduce in their daily practices, commercial practices, those principles. And more companies are coming with us, which is a sign that the private sector understands the role that they need to play in this country. The government has come from the very beginning as a partner. The government responsibility is to translate those human rights and labor standards and environmental protection and transparency into regulations so that all private sector players align with and comply. But the initiative of the private sector is commendable, and we are very happy to, at some point, to come. By the way, the Institute is a member of the UN Global Compact, and we appreciate that. This is all from me. I would like to thank for the honor of being here today and to say something. This institute has been around since 2004. In any country, it is important to have a forum of debates with organizations, with the government, with politicians. This is opening the capacity of all people, regardless of the category, the social category, to understand what we are doing, what the government is doing, what organizations, private sector companies, state companies are expecting. Please continue with this public debate. You saw how low rates are there with people involved in any type of debate on their own life matters. So we very much encourage you to continue. We'll be happy to come, and I'm happy to also see some of the international companies present here. I could see Christos Milanos from Shell, a very good partner of us on many programs. And whenever you call upon us, we will be here. Thank you, and we wish you a nice afternoon.
Simona, I
Thank
have
you.
one question for you. About the figures that you have just mentioned or the percentage, do you rely on official resources for these figures or independent resources, or you have both? And what kind of samples you get from each?
This information comes from people. There was no government involved into that. We've conducted the survey across the country in all 18 governorates, 29,000 households. And I mentioned at the very beginning, but I think you were coming in at that point, 96% of them, almost 96.6, almost 100% of them have answered. They found those questionnaires very relevant. So we process the information. The only role of the COSIT, of the Central Organization of Statistics, in this survey is that they were aware of what we were doing and they were with us because they hold, according to their law, they hold a monopoly on all data in this country. But the source of information is from people, directly, all kinds of people across the country, and we continue this type of survey. The same network will be used. We may expand the coverage. Human development indicators translate how growth gets to people. And the professor mentioned, many people mentioned here, I just want to say that human development indicator is measured with life expectancy. If people live longer, the level of income, living standards translated into services. For the life expectancy, we cannot yet say where Iraq stands because we do not have the results of the census. The census will help us to come up with new information on the life expectancy in Iraq. And after that, of course, we calculate various other indicators. To make sure that we provide you with the right information, we invite Mustansiriya University to work with us on the following analysis. We need to do an analysis on multipliers. How much each dollar spent from the budget generates in terms of growth. You've mentioned the increase of budget spending, but let's look at growth. How much budget spending has translated into growth increase? Another multiplier is how much of the deficit, budget deficit, has translated into growth. Because the budget deficit does not necessarily show that the government is not performing. The budget deficit is a tool for the government to spend today at the future cost. It's transferring the cost on future generations. And the government that is, not the government that has a deficit is a problem. The problem is the government that has a deficit without financing tools. There are no financing tools to fund the deficit other than standby arrangements, public borrowing. Anyway, to look at how much the deficit has translated into growth is another indicator. And the most important one is how much each dollar of spending has created in terms of growth versus a change in the human development indicators. How human development indicators have changed based on how much was spent. And we stand ready to conduct that analysis. This is what my department is doing in the UN, and I would be happy to be able to engage with you so that we conduct an analysis that shows how much your oil is translating into people's life through the government vehicle, with the government vehicle that is the main spending one. And again, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for your presentation. دراسة الدكتور كمال البصري دعم التعليم المتطلبات سيادة القانون يقوم بإلقائها الأستاذ علاء حياة.
السلام عليكم جميعا. أنا علاء فهد، خبير في المعهد العراقي للإصلاح الاقتصادي. يسعدني أن أقدم دراسة الدكتور كمال البصري حول دعم التعليم بمتطلبات سيادة القانون. قد يختلف هذا العنوان عن ما تم طرحه في دراساتي السابقة، لكن سأبدأ من حيث ما انتهى به الأساتذة، أنه لا يمكن تحقيق تنمية بشرية في العراق من دون أن يكون هناك سيادة للقانون، ولا يمكن أن يسود القانون بدون وجود أو دعم لقطاع التعليم، باعتبار أن قطاع التعليم هو المرتكز الأساسي للتنمية البشرية. نحن لا نستطيع أن نخلق مجتمع نامي أو متطور ومتقدم بدون أن ندعم قطاع التعليم. أستاذ عادل النكست سلايد. أستاذ عادل. لا أحاول الإطالة، لكني سأستعرض بعض المؤشرات التي تخص الفتوة والشباب في العراق، منها مؤشرات اجتماعية وصحية. من المؤشرات الاجتماعية أن نسبة الذين لا يؤيدون المرأة في العمل هي 43%. نسبة من يرون أن المرأة لا تقل منزلة عن الرجل لا تتجاوز 69%. هذه المؤشرات تم أخذها من وزارة التخطيط من النشرة لعام 2010. نسبة من يرون أن الممارسات السياسية أصبحت حكرا على الرجال تبلغ 31%. نسبة من لديهم دور في اتخاذ قرار زواجهم تبلغ 56%. المؤشرات الصحية، نسبة الشباب الذين يعرفون الغذاء الصحي المتوازن. لا قرار زواجهم، العفو، هناك خطأ في الطباعة، قرار زواجهم. باعتبار انه حريه الاختيار هذا ناتج من دوافع الحريه الشخصيه، هذا مؤشر من مؤشرات الحريه الشخصيه في الاختيار.